Testing 1, 2.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
Thursday, May 25th, the regular meeting of the Planning Commission. And it is 6:30. Can we have a roll call vote?
Sure. Karen is at home. She's saying she can't hear us.
I can hear you now.
I inadvertently had my mic
Oh,
on,
okay.
so.
Okay.
So
I
Karen,
can,
you can hear.
yeah, I can hear you guys now. I saw you talking earlier, but couldn't hear you. But when Nancy started, I could hear everything,
Great,
and I
thank
can
you.
hear you now.
Thank you. Chair Amadeo,
Here.
Vice Chair Woodson, Commissioner Herr,
Here.
Commissioner Rana, Commissioner St. John,
Here.
Commissioner Walton, Commissioner Jacobson.
Here.
You have quorum.
Thank you. If we can have a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance, would somebody volunteer to lead us in the pledge? Maybe we could have, all right. We have a volunteer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're going to move on now to special announcements and communications from the floor. So first, we will go out to the public for any special announcements or anything that may be of community interest or something that you'd like to share. Anybody from the public? And I don't see anyone. So commissioners, do any of you have any announcements that you would like to share with the rest of the community? And I don't see any lights going on. I have one brief communication. I've said this before in the past, but Marina in Motion is accepting donations for the creation of bronze dolphin to go in a roundabout on Imshin Parkway, and I believe the roundabout is due to be completed sometime in 2024, near the end of 2024. We've been working hard to raise money, and to date we have almost $77,000 raised. We're $7,700 raised. Oh, 77,000. Maybe we could build something really spectacular. So $7,700 raised. We're trying to raise 10,000. If you would like to make a donation, you can contact Marina in Motion at their email. That's marinainmotion@gmail.com. All one word, no dashes, no capitals. And I would be happy to send you a form to fill out to return with your check, and it's totally tax deductible. So thank you very much. Okay, next is ex parte communication disclosures. And this could be on anything on the agenda. It would be important to let the public know that there was communication with members of the public and what was discussed as it relates to the agenda item. Did you have something you wanted to add, Rita?
No, I'll let the commissioners
Okay.
share their.
Okay, so does anybody have any ex parte communication they'd like to disclose? Yes, Commissioner St. John.
On, I forget the dates, exact dates, but on Wednesday, a week or so ago, at a Sea Haven meeting, there was a presentation that included the
Please speak into the microphone for all commissioners.
there was a presentation that included the cell phone tower that's on our agenda today, this evening. And after the meeting, 2 or 3 of the attendees, I don't remember their names, came up and discussed it very briefly with me, that they were, very concerned about it. And then on Saturday during the general plan workshop, again, one or two attendees talked with me after the meeting or after the workshop, just very briefly expressing their opinions about the cell tower. And that's all.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to disclose any ex parte communication? I'm not seeing
So,
anybody.
Madam Chair, I became aware that Dustin Bogue, he's the Marina Station a developer. He lives in Sea Haven. He had a conversation with Commissioner Woodson, and Dustin wanted us to just disclose that. So we just,
And then,
that's fine, but we're just trying to be extra cautious,
Extra
and we always
cautious,
just disclose. So we just wanted to point that out.
I had, I
And
belong.
please speak into the microphone, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry. I had, I belong to a texting group of citizens. And this item came up. And one of the things that was discussed by members of the group was why couldn't it be relocated to where the ham operating station was? And I believe that you can give an accurate answer to that. What I said, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, is that that is part of the Lands to Park properties that we received back in, at the time that the base closed. And because of that, that is not allowed to be used for private use. It has to be for public use. And even though there's a public benefit is not the same thing as public use. And that is what that was what I said. That was my only communication with that group. Okay. So we will move on to the consent agenda, and the only item on the consent agenda is the action minutes for April 27th, 2023. Are there any corrections or comments on that item? And I don't see any, so I will accept a motion to approve.
I move we approve the minutes.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Jacobson and Commissioner Rana seconds. Do we have to do a roll call anymore?
I would prefer, just to help Karen out and just to
Okay.
make it clear if we have to go back.
Okay, so if we can have a roll call vote.
Chair Amadeo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Woodson, Commissioner Herr,
Yes.
Commissioner Rana, Commissioner St. John,
Yes.
Commissioner Walton,
Yes.
Commissioner Jacobson, and let the record reflect that
Yes.
Commissioner Walton did join the meeting. So
All right. thank
motion
you.
passes.
And now we will move on to the public hearing. This public hearing of the Planning Commission is to consider adopting a resolution approving a conditional use permit number CUP 22-02 to construct a new 89-foot tall monopine wireless facility located in the Cypress Knolls property at California Avenue and 3rd Avenue. The project is exempt from environmental review per a Class 3 categorical exemption, Section 15303 of the California Environmental Quality Act, that's CEQA, presented by interim senior planner Nick, and I'm going to say your name wrong, McElroy.
McElroy.
McElroy. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Nick.
I have a presentation to share with the planning commissioners. So before you tonight is a conditional use permit for, thank you, for the proposed AT&T wireless facility in Cypress Knolls. As the chair said, I'm the staff planner. I'm Nicholas McElroy. So this is the project location site, the proposed project location site. It's going to be on, it would be on California Avenue and 3rd Avenue in the Cypress Knolls area. The area is approximately 188 acres, and then the particular parcel that this is on is not subdivided. It's currently 154 plus acres. So it's a very large parcel. Here is that parcel in question. You can see it. It's quite a large parcel, and this site is on the eastern side of the parcel, right along California Avenue. So before you today is a conditional use permit specifically for a 89-foot tall monopine. And a monopine is a faux pine tree monopole. That's how it's defined. Wireless facility within the Cypress Knolls property. And the project includes a 900 square foot lease area, which is surrounded by an 8-foot tall solid wall, which will shield the ground equipment and utility infrastructure. And and then the particular section of the code is also on the screen before you. And in the R1 district, towers, poles, water tanks, and other similar structures, including monopines, may be erected to a greater height than the district standard of 30 feet. So this would fall within a permitted use subject to a conditional use permit, which is what is before you tonight. The height is before you tonight. So the actual monopine structure itself is 84 feet tall. And then the pine branches do go up another 5 feet to 89 feet. The reason for the height being 89 feet is, well, one, to disguise it as a faux tree, but also to accommodate up to 2 additional wireless carriers in the future. So currently the top of the monopine would be an AT&T antenna as proposed. And then in the future, if this project gets built, they would have the ability to co-locate additional carriers to be determined in the future. Reducing the height would result in losing that, those additional carriers. And that would in turn mean that there most likely would have to be multiple wireless facilities in this vicinity in the future to accommodate all of the different cell phone carriers. Further, if the height is reduced, it'll also reduce the effectiveness of the coverage of the wireless facility. Here is the site plan showing the easements and the site itself. You can see that there's an existing dead cypress tree on where the site will be, which will be removed. No tree removal permits are necessary with this application. It's already dead, so it's just a standard removal without any other further permits. And you can see I highlighted in blue the 2 easements for utilities and access off 3rd Avenue. This site that's proposed is preferred due to coverage gaps in this area. And this area includes Sea Haven, Central Marina, the Dunes development, and parts of the CSUMB campus, as well as it might reach a little bit to the Target shopping center as well. The site's also ideal for access to utilities and access to the road for maintenance and repairs. The topography here is good because it is a natural high spot for the tower. If the tower were to move west into the Cypress Knolls site, it actually goes down as you go towards the freeway. So this is a natural high area, and it's also a good area for coverage because there's a wireless facility within a half mile that's proposed to be decommissioned within the next 5 years. And so cell phone coverage will continue to decrease over the next 5 years due to that decommissioning of that cell tower. So you can see here on the coverage map provided by the applicant, this is the current coverage. Just to describe this a little bit, the green means you have reliable service indoors and outdoors. The yellow on this map means that you have reliable coverage during transit, less reliable indoors. And then the blue is more poor reliability. It's less reliable and and then you can see in red, that's the proposed site, and then in black with the existing other wireless facilities. And then on the map, you can see this is now the map with the proposed LTE coverage with the monopine installed. This is based on what the applicant has provided. So as you can see that this coverage does include this. pretty much all of Sea Haven, including future phases. It also covers parts of Preston Abrams, the southern part of CSUMB, parts of the dunes, and then it goes towards goes along Imgen. So in order to generate the wireless coverage, of course, that comes with radio frequency. So as part of this application, the applicant provided a radio frequency report on January 3rd, 2023, prepared by a qualified individual license in the state of California. He is currently on the call. So if there's further questions, he can answer those if you have specific questions about that report. Staff reviewed the report and found that it stated that the proposed wireless facility will not expose members of the general public to hazardous levels of RF energy at ground level or in adjacent buildings. This complies with the FCC's regulations for RF exposure. And per the 1996 Telecommunications Act, that's the extent that we are able to review the impact of the RF. So because it's covered by the federal law, no state or local government can use the RF regulations or exposures to.
Yeah, the 1996 Telecommunications Act prohibits us from denying the permit based on the potential health impacts of the facility. So we just want to make that very clear to the commission.
Thank you, Guido. So the next aspect that I will go over is the views. I went through the view study that the applicant provided, and I included the approximate linear distance of the views that that was reviewed to see where it was visible from. So as you can see on this map, the proposed monopine is not viewable from the high school, from 1,600 feet into the central Marina neighborhood, as well as it won't be visible on that one location on Imgen that's approximately 2,600 square feet, linear feet away. It is visible on the other 5 locations, which I'll next show in my slides. And they range from directly across the street from it to approximately 1,000 feet in the central Marina neighborhood. So here is a view when you're driving on California heading toward Imgen. And as you can see, it is viewable from the street as you're driving. Here is the second view. This is from about 900 feet from the proposed monopine inside of the Sea Haven development, right next to the cove. As you can see, the very tip of it will be viewable. Here is a view heading the other direction on California, just north of Marina Heights Drive. And as you can see, it's clearly visible from this location as well. From central Marina neighborhood, this is the approximately 900 feet away. This is where it's barely visible. It would be difficult to spot it amongst the other trees in this neighborhood. If there wasn't an arrow pointing at it, I think you would have a hard time finding it on this picture. And then we also requested that the applicant include this rendering to show what it will look like from across the street from very close to it, just to give an idea of exactly what it will look like, including the 8-foot tall enclosure around it. As you can see, it's very high quality for the enclosure. We thought this was important because the proposed location goes along the Fortag Trail. And so we wanted to do as much as we could to preserve that Fortag Trail and to screen any potential equipment inside that wireless facility ground area. And just for reference, it's approximately 27 feet from the trail to the fence, and then it's approximately 40 feet from the trail to the base of the monopine. So it is set back quite a bit from that trail. An important aspect of wireless facilities is the safety component. The proposed wireless facility would, if approved, would include a standby diesel generator. These are very important for natural disasters as they provide cell service if the power goes out. These days, more and more people are relying on cell phone service for how they communicate with safety personnel, including police, fire, medical emergencies. And motorists also heavily rely on cell phones to get roadside assistance in case there's an emergency. And then even outside of disasters, people need to be able to contact public safety personnel. And I didn't mention that police, fire, and public safety personnel also use cell phones nowadays. So it really goes both ways. In an unrelated study, Denise Duffy did do a biological study in Cypress Knolls. It's part of our ongoing study of the sensitive habitat in Cypress Knolls. They found no Monterey gilia back on October 12th, 2022 in this proposed location. And this is consistent with all the other studies they've done for the past 20 years. We've been studying Cypress Knolls for a very long time. So we're very familiar with where the gilia is. As you can see here in this map, the gilia is shown in purple with a 50-foot buffer around the known Monterey gilia populations. So as you can see, they're quite far away, and this site is not in any jeopardy of impacting gilia at all. So this is a City of Marina owned parcel. We own this parcel. So if this project is approved by the Planning Commission, then the wireless facility would need to get a ground lease approved by the City Council. So that would be the next step, handled by the City Manager's office. Staff reviewed this project and found that it is that it is exempt under Class 3, Section 15303. Categorical exemption for new construction and conversion of small structures. Planning also reviewed all the exceptions to this categorical exemption and provided responses to each of them, finding that no additional environmental analysis is required for the approval of this project. So that's in your attached to the resolution in your packet. Just wanted to point out that in order to approve this use permit, you need to make these findings. Staff has provided evidence for these findings in the staff reports resolution in the findings. Just wanted to put them on the screen so you're aware of them. If you wanted to read the actual evidence that supports these, I have that in the attachment to the resolution. And we come to the recommended motion. So this is in your packet. I won't read it again at this point, but if you need me to go back to this, I can. The recommended motion is to approve the conditional use permit. And then, so this brings us to questions. I will just, before I get to questions, just wanted to point out that we do have the applicant in the audience here, Mark Lobaugh, as well as the RF engineer, Dave, is on the Zoom call. So he can answer any questions they can answer any questions, and they might like to give a presentation. So now I'll turn it back to the chair for questions.
Yes, first, commissioners, if you have any questions. Yes, Commissioner Walton.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you, Nick. That was amazing. I don't know who took the pictures, but they were really good. So if that was you, thank you. I appreciate it. That kind of gave a good idea of what it would be that we were seeing. So I'm gonna start. I have, is it comments and questions or
No, just questions. at
just
this time.
questions? Okay, so I have a few questions. So where in the city are similar towers to this one? Are there any other towers at 89 feet in the city currently?
There are some towers closer to the Walmart location.
Mhm.
I don't have the exact height. We can certainly get that for the commission.
Would
So,
that, so is that the only one? Is
that's the one that
near Walmart?
I'm aware of. Matt's motioning to. Okay,
Yes.
Matt's our assistant city manager motioning that there are 2 in the parking lot. So
Can we bring up that map again with the coverage, the service coverage? With
Sure,
the green and the blue?
absolutely.
Thank you. And then while you're bringing that up, what I wanted to know is with respect to coverage, service coverage in this particular map, where's the 5G coming from that we already have? Is it from the towers that are here down by the library, airport and CSUMB? Okay, and then what other sites were reviewed for this particular project? Where else? Was it just this one, or did we explore other opportunities?
we did explore other sites. It might be better if the applicant addresses those because this is more in their bailiwick. We can certainly address from a staff perspective why this might be a potential ideal location, but we would probably punt to the applicant on that one.
So I think this is kind of a question and a comment, or a, I don't know. Well, I'll ask and then you can stop me where I'm. Okay, so what I'm worried about is with respect to property value decreasing because of the 5G tower where it is. When I did some research, I saw that there's a lot of evidence that shows that property values do decrease. People don't want to live next to towers. People do have a lot of health concerns.
Audra,
yes.
you're heading into comments.
Thank you. Okay, so my question is if it's worth it to the city to risk the loss of citizens moving into the area, with Cypress Nose being something that we are looking to develop, and also people moving out of that particular area. I know we had some written comments that came in through our email, so I'm just, helping them to have a voice, I hope, in this arena. And then I think this is my last question because the rest I think maybe comments. If this is approved, how many more of these towers would we need to get with respect to that map that was just up? The rest of the city fully the suburbs, zero service coverage gaps. There you go.
So that was a lot. So I'll try. If I miss something, please, don't be afraid to chime in. So these are the findings of fact the commission needs to focus on. Typically, loss of value is not really a kind of issue per se for the commission. We're really focused on these findings of fact. In terms of, you were asking about health issues, we've referenced that the 1996 Telecommunication Act actually bars us from having that be as evidence in terms of potentially denying a wireless permit in terms of the health impacts. So that's not something we can really get into tonight. And then you had quite a few questions.
I did. I think
so.
My question is, I think more with respect to the health issues, other people's concerns, keeping them from moving into our area. That's with respect to property and people wanting to live next to the tower. If we can't discuss property values, my question still is with respect to people wanting to live next to the area. From what I understand, young people want to live next to the tower because then there's no, ping. There's zero ping in their Call of Duty. So that's exciting for 5G. But for some of our more mature citizens that may want to move here. They might choose not to because, you know, if we build, say, Cypress Knolls isn't built yet. We haven't developed it, and we're still kind of trying to consider what it is that we're going to put there. So if we were to put a senior citizens home there, or a site like the one that we were thinking about, anyway, I don't want to get into the
So
comments
I get
so
the
far,
gist of
but-
your question. So Cypress Knolls is still in a very much an infancy stage. It's not on the agenda tonight, so we should be careful what we talk about Cypress Knolls. In terms of this potential use in relationship to the rest of it, obviously, if approved by the city, we would be very mindful of that moving forward with the Cypress Knolls project. So that would obviously play a factor, but there's a lot of factors going on with Cypress Knolls. There's the Tag Trail, there's the Gilia, there's the water allocation. So this would be one of many factors the Planning Commission and the City Council would have to kind of weigh in terms of the overall development, but it's not on the agenda and we're barely getting that baby birthed. So it's we're in the first trimester of Cypress Knolls. So yeah, hopefully that answered your question.
Right, so
So-
I think so. I guess I'm just expressing that because the Cypress Knolls isn't developed yet, and it's a huge potential, this project will be with us for years, correct?
Right.
Do we know how many years?
I mean, it will be for the foreseeable future.
30, 40, 80?
Yeah, I would defer to the applicant. They stay up for quite a while. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's gonna be with us for a while. So I just want to make sure before we say yes to a project like this, that we've considered, you know, these things that are on the list. And
Well,
perhaps,
and
perhaps I
we-
need more
and-
training to understand what this means exactly and how I'm not addressing some of this. That's
Right,
I
and we
make-
have, and that's part of the location of where, and we'll let the applicant speak to the coverage issues, but it seemed to be far away from the Gilia, far away from the Tag Trail, pretty significantly away from the rest of the Cypress Knolls potential future development. So that's from a city perspective, it seemed to be a pretty good location. So.
Thank you.
Sorry I didn't mean to cut you off, that's all.
Next, we have Commissioner Woodson. We'll get to you. Pardon me? Yes.
We look very different from each other.
You both have face covering on, so.
Thank you, Commissioner Amadeo, Chair Amadeo.
Please speak into the microphone.
Gonna pull it forward. Maybe I'll raise that question to you now. Actually, I have a few questions and I'll come back later and ask them, and I definitely have some comments. And we can table these as a group if you want to address them. The first one is, we're gonna go on, I'm gonna start with prioritization. That there are significant dead spots that exist within the Marina community. This is not one of them right now. So my question is, why the prioritization on moving to California Avenue versus covering an area that is about to put in 300 homes in the next year and a half that has no coverage, which is the Dunes area, the newest phases that is just laying the pads in right now. So why prioritize this that has poor coverage to an area that has no coverage? The second question I have goes back to the basic one of what is the tower that's being decommissioned, the one that is actually by the ham radio station? Or which tower is it? Because it's not actually identified here. There are 3 towers that I know that are there. I know that my house was on the airport tower at one point, and that tower had maintenance issues. So my next question is, coming down to looking at AT&T's kind of overall systems plan and layout for the city, I'm going to kind of build on what Commissioner Walton talked about, is what is the overall plan And how does this fit into our coverage map? For 4 years, there has been a maintenance issue at the airport tower. And I was physically reassigned to the CSU and B tower to get better coverage. And the concern is that we're fixing a tower here, but I'd like to kind of the prioritization of why we did the designs. The third question I have, and then I'll come back later with my other questions, is I understand that this is on a hilltop of a lower area. However, another area that is a higher area that has future development, and I'm not going to, and we'll come back to future growth development, is literally the corner of Imgen in California where the projected fire department is supposed to go. And that is definitely 50 to 60 feet higher than here. And it seems like there could be a tower that went there that would provide the same range because it's sitting up higher. It could be, anyway, that's a comment, so I'll come back to it. So the fourth question I had is why are we putting it here instead of where the potential fire station is? And then the last that ties into that is, and this is, I'm not going to go into Cypress Knolls development. However, on April 11th, we sat here for hours listening to the American Planning Association give us a survey. And we are now literally proposing to build a tower at the end of the green belt that connects the whole Cypress Knolls development into the rest of the city and into Sea Haven. So the question then goes back to how did we miss this during the April 11th that we presented a whole series of discussions on this whole new greenway and how great it was going to be, and then totally left out the fact that we're going to put in a 89-foot tower right at the head wall, right at the head trailhead of that area. Thank you.
I want to take a stab.
I'll answer a couple of them.
You want to start? and then I'll
Yeah.
Take over.
So in terms of the fire station, I believe we did look at that, and there were some issues in terms of it being in a little lower topography. In terms of a committee, that really was a conceptual plan. We are moving forward with writing an RFP as directed by the council, and we will, as I mentioned to Commissioner Walton, be getting into a lot more detail. That will probably be a 2-year or more public process with multiple meetings and public hearings and many factors. So it wasn't missed by the staff. It was just that once again the APA's focus was just overall strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities for the site. But it was not supposed to be a be-all, catch-all site plan analysis for Cypress Knolls. So, and Nick was going to address the first part in terms of the decommissioned site, and we'll pass it off to Nick. So.
Thank you, Guido. Thank you, Guido. Sorry, my mic was kind of taking a second. So I just wanted to say to your first question about prioritization, it's sort of like a chicken and an egg situation where there are residents now in Sea Haven and there are residents in Central Marina, and those homes are built. So I'm sure the applicant can speak to this, but they have people with cell phones in that community now, in all those communities now, who are looking for cell phone coverage. So I'm sure once those homes are built and people move in and that demand is then there, then not necessarily this cell phone provider, but potentially other ones might come in and ask to install a different wireless facility in a different location. So, this is a private company who proposed to bring a cell phone tower to the city of Marina. So, but it is a unique situation where it is a city of Marina owned parcel. So this site was picked for the coverage and impacting the most residents now today, rather than impacting residents in the future. So, and then in terms of where the other location is, I can show you on the screen on a map. Let me pull up just a Google map. I'm sorry I didn't have this on as a slide, but if you can see on the screen, this is Imgen Parkway right here. As you go down, there's DX Street, so it's at 599 DX. near the equestrian center up on this hill right here where these trees are. Yeah, correct. Yeah, so that will be decommissioned. I don't have the details on why it's being decommissioned. I just know that within 5 years, it will be decommissioned and taken down. I don't know if it's from a Fort Ord thing, or I'm not quite sure on that, so I can't speak to that. And I'm sorry, I missed your third question about the design. I was hoping you could repeat that question.
So I think the design, it just goes back to if we, the fire, it ties to the part B of the fire department location. And that why that can't be used, because if it could be used, even a taller tower sitting at that corner right there would probably be acceptable, because it would be tied to a commercial, well, it should be tied to the fire department as part of the property there. And it's not going to cause as many issues as this tower is going to cause from a perception perspective.
Okay, we'll let the applicant speak to
That's
that.
fine.
Okay, thank you.
And you are going to hold off on any other questions? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to move on to Commissioner Jacobson, I believe was next.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This question is for the RF consultant. And I recognize that we're being held to a 27-year-old law that isn't up to date with probably the technology of today. But the question is there any credible research to suggest that cell towers are harmless?
If you can hear me okay, I think it's coming through. I believe you just asked me to prove a negative, if I heard your question correct. And I'm not capable of proving a negative to that standpoint. I'm aware that the FCC reviews all of the latest scientific studies, and they keep up to date on the latest studies. And as recently as late 2019, they determined there was not a need to change the current regulations based on impacts to safety in the human body.
Thank you.
It's up to the chair. So-
When the commissioners have finished asking their questions, I'll invite you up to answer those that have been reserved for you. Okay, so Commissioner Hurd.
Well, I think you kind of answered my question already, but I was wondering this wireless facility, about half mile to the south. Is there a possibility that which will be decommissioned within 5 years? Is there a potential that it could be recycled or recommissioned since it's already there?
So my understanding is that that's because of the circumstances of that tower, no other antenna can be co-located there. And the existing antenna needs to be decommissioned in 5 years. It's part of the lease agreement with that land, and it's just part of that structure. So my understanding is there's no changing that. But that's my understanding of that situation. So
That means things could still change in 5 years.
Yes, things could still change in 5 years. Yeah. And there's currently only one provider for that tower. I believe it's T-Mobile.
I believe it's also part of the deed restrictions for that property for the Fort Ord that it has to be removed.
Right.
That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner St. John.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My first question is from the biological report by Denise Duffy and Associates. It's stated that report, that their survey of the proposed site was performed on October 12th, 2022. And I just wanted to confirm or to ask the question, is it the survey was done on 10/12 or the report was written on 10/12? Because I was advised just recently that it's almost impossible to identify Sandelia, to positively identify them unless they're in blooming of the flower, which is kind of like right now. And so, anyway, that's just a clarification. I suspect that the survey was probably done during the blooming season of the flower and not during October. Can y'all clarify?
Yes, so as Nick mentioned in his presentation, the site's actually been surveyed multiple times for Gilead. This was just the latest reiteration of it, and we have not found evidence of Gilead near this facility. So the date is almost immaterial because we have a historical record showing that Gilead will not be impacted by this potential facility. So.
Okay, thank you. My next question is a considerable a use permit always required for any wireless facility, or only because this antenna is over 30 feet in height?
We have to get the use permit because we're going over the height for the zoning district, which is the R1 district. We're going above the 30 feet.
So otherwise, no use permit would be required.
That's correct.
You know. Okay. Then in general, are cell phone antennas located on public or private property in Marina, or both?
They're in both.
Okay. And so to put it on private property, the cell phone company would only deal with the owner of the private property and not the city, and would only get whatever building permits would have been required.
If it goes over the height, it would still come before you guys. So private property or public, it's immaterial. It's the height is the use permit for before the commission tonight.
Okay. And my next question is, does the city of Marina have any published guidelines or restrictions for the location of cell phone towers, or any in the planning stages or phases now?
Well, as we spoke at the January Planning Commission, there are several holes in our municipal code. That's something that we've been bringing to you guys pretty consistently, and a wireless ordinance is something we are actively working on, along with the TUP section of the code, a special event permit, some of the housing legislation that we've brought to you guys, to the body. So yes, we're actively looking at multiple sections of the code that need to be updated. So.
Okay. So there most likely will be in the new zoning codes will address cell phone towers. Most
Yes,
likely.
yes, we're researching it, and there's a whole series of, if you recall, we brought to the commission in January, there's about 3 pages of zoning text amendments that we are at some point going to be eventually working on. The housing ones that we've brought the last 18 months that are priority, because those are the ones for the housing element. But this is one of many ordinances that we are working on. So.
Okay. But most likely, it's possible that those restrictions that we're working on now, or you're working on now, could be reviewed and approved in 2023 calendar year?
Well, we have to kind of wait for the budget cycle to finish and the council priorities, and like there's about 6 or 7 ordinances we're working on, so we just have to prioritize. And obviously the housing ones take priority because of the housing element, but 2023, 2024 sounds reasonable.
Then my last question is a follow-up to the RF emissions question that was asked earlier. And my question is, what is the date of the FCC and OSHA requirements that the emissions for this project conform to, that they are in accordance with the FCC and OSHA requirements, but those requirements were as of a date of some date, which I don't know. That's my question. What date are we in compliance with for the
Understood.
regulations?
So the regulations were set in place in 1996 originally, but they are reviewed on a regular basis. And on the FCC website itself, it states that all of the regulations related to safety were reviewed in late 2019. I believe it was December of 2019, and the FCC elected not to change the current regulations.
Okay, well, is it not true that 5G in the United States did not achieve any level other than maybe 5 or 10% of the nation until 2020?
That may be true, but all of the frequencies associated with the current FCC rules fall under all of the different Gs, from amps 1G to 2G of UMTS and 3G CDMA, 4G LTE. 5G continues to use the same frequencies that fall under the FCC guidelines for RF safety.
Okay. But 5G
There
uses-
there is a millimeter wave spectrum that utilizes different frequencies than the previous Gs, but that's not being deployed on this tower. And the millimeter wave is still a part of the frequencies that have already been certified by the FCC.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay.
That's all the questions I have for this time.
Mine is more one of aesthetics because it is an 89-foot tall tower. So the aesthetics of it is a tree, a typical pine tree is more conical, not cylindrical. And so is there a way to address it so that it doesn't look like a rocket ship and looks more like a tree, so that it's more appealing to the eye, more aesthetically blending in, even though it's way taller than any of the other trees in the surrounding area? They will get taller. So that's my question. Can it be aesthetically addressed through this permitting process?
I've seen them in all shapes and sizes. We'll punt to the applicant. I've seen them. I run quite a bit, so I see a lot of these on different running trails, and they come in all shapes and sizes. But we'll punt to the applicant about the aesthetics of that at this time.
And then, oh no, I'll wait till comments for this. Never mind. Yes, Commissioner Ron.
My question is that we talked about RF study carried out to understand the impact of radiations for the neighborhoods. But this study is done based on what is going to happen now. But once the tower comes up, the technology changes, the requirement also changes. So the applicant or the company has the option to upgrade technology with new emitters. So the question is that, will city have any control over that upgrade of technology and the impact which is going to cause on the local inhabitants? Or it is just that once the tower comes up, that the company can do whatever they feel like?
Yeah, so two-parter answer. So the benefit of being a Marina resident is the city actually owns quite a bit of land. We own the ground underneath this. If technology changes and they apply for a swap out of antennas, we would ask for additional studies as part of that. So there is some control. Obviously, there's a lease that we would sign. So the leasee, the applicant would have some rights under that. You can't just demo it and not, they have certain reasonable backed expectations, but we are the property owner. And as part of the building permit process, if there were a swap out, we would ask for additional studies. And so that's a standard practice for most community development departments. So.
If I can just add to that, Guido, if in the packet and the conditions of approval, I'll put them on the screen now. We have addressed this question, I believe, to some degree. Condition of approval number 8, federal FCC compliance. So the facility shall be operated in full compliance at all times with the applicable FCC guidelines and regulations. And then it talks about warning signs shall be posted in compliance with FCC guidelines and requirements and to notice about potential RF exposure to RF emissions. And that's specifically for the maintenance crew that works on the facility. So
there are some assurances that there's follow-up.
That's correct. So going forward, this facility, per the conditions of approval, must be maintained, at safe exposure levels, both for buildings and people, as well as maintenance crews. So.
Thank you.
And you can, if you have suggestions for additional conditions of approval, or you wanted to add on to anything, just, you can make that as part of a motion. So.
Okay, I don't see any further lights. Commissioner Rana, you didn't have any other questions? Okay, then we're going to go out to the applicant and let him respond to those questions and add anything additional if you'd like to, and then we'll be going to the public.
For your thoughtful questions, commissioners. My name is Mark Lobaugh. Wireless. I'm very nice representing. Thanks, staff. Can you press the button on the mic? So sorry. I'll repeat. Mark Lobaugh, Epic Wireless, here on behalf of my client AT&T. Thank you for your thoughtful questions. Those are great questions, and I've been writing furiously, and I think I can address them. Typically, I would come up and do some sort of a presentation and sort of head off some of those questions, but with now I can look back at my notes and we can cross that bridge as we come to them. I think first and foremost, you ask, well, why a cell tower here? Okay, there's no secret. This area suffers from coverage and capacity. It's a two-pronged approach: coverage and capacity. You've got a lot of new rooftops going in out there. There's a lot of existing homes, brand new homes, and a lot of new homes coming in. Okay, we try to get out in front of that and build cell towers that will work with the existing network. You build these towers to work in a network. They don't work by themselves, okay? So can we put the coverage map up on there? The primary goal of this facility is to provide in-building service, okay? As you're driving down Highway 1, that's not in-building coverage. And all that purple area that you see on that coverage map, that's out of building coverage. Go back one slide if you would, please, Nick. This is the existing coverage as it is today. Those green islands, those are existing AT&T towers. So one of the questions that I had was, where are existing AT&T towers? Those are the, Commissioner Walton asked that question. Those are existing AT&T coverage or facilities. As you can see, there's a big open uncovered area in the middle there where we're attempting to build this facility. Now on the next slide, the green represents in-building coverage. That's what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to get homeowners in that area better coverage inside their home so they can have cellular coverage and broadband. Okay, the yellow is a little lesser coverage, but still, the goal is the green. Ideally, you've got all yellow and green, but we just don't have that in this area. So we're doing the best we can with this particular facility. It's not designed to address coverage capabilities along Highway 1. topography and trees and a number of different factors play into that. So typically when I get assigned a search ring, go out and find a search ring, Mark. They send me a dot on a map and they say, find something as close as you can to this particular point. Okay, that's what happened here. We were assigned the search ring, and we ordinarily would try to find existing facilities that we could co-locate on. The obvious candidate was the existing tower that's located about a half mile away. It's on City of Marina property. That was the first thing I did, is call City of Marina and say, hey, let's do a co-location on that tower. What do you think? Unfortunately, that tower, as was mentioned by staff, there was, when it was transferred from the federal government to City of Marina, had deed restrictions. And my understanding, I don't know all the particulars, but my brief understanding is that those restrictions clearly stated no commercial use. And unfortunately, that tower was allowed to proceed. And now they've understood that there's an issue there, and so they will not allow the expansion of the tower co-location, and actually will be decommissioned in the next 5 years. So unfortunately, we did not have that co-location opportunity afforded to us. Hence, we start the new search. Okay, so now we start looking at different opportunities, and gosh, we spent a lot of time walking the site with staff, looking at maps, looking at aerial photos. We approached private developers at a high level with AT&T. None of the developers were interested in accommodating cell tower in those residential developments. Next candidate was City of Marina property, which there is a lot of it. They're the primary landowner in that area, or most of Marina for that matter. And then we started, actually literally walking sites, looking at special species maps, looking at utilities maps, looking at topography, looking at trees where you wouldn't have to remove trees. And at the end of the day, we tried to be as thoughtful as possible. And we came up with this site for a variety of reasons. The topography, the fire station site was, as I remember it, there's quite a substantial dip in topography and elevation as it goes down that way. There were a number of factors. There was as I remember, some water, I think there was there's some drainage issues, there were utility issues, a number of reasons that precluded that particular site. We did try to go up at the corner up there. There were just any number of factors prohibiting us from going up at the corner of, Imgem in California. So we came to this site. So then we decided, well, geez, what do we want this thing to look like? How, we have a few options available to us when we do cell towers. We can do the trees, okay? And different species of trees, different, heights. This one is a tall tower. This is an 89-footer. So it does get stretched out. It has kind of a uniform appearance, okay? So we can do different branching and make it an irregular branching, which I think would assist with that. We can match color the needles and attempt to match the existing color of the cypress that are out there. We can do that with staff, take samples out, see, hey, which one actually looks the best. These photo simulations were done by really an expert who does this for us. It's based off a survey. He flies a drone. They're very accurate. And he attempts to portray a site as realistically as humanly possible. We've also surrounded this structure with a noise wall. It consists of PVC material that has kind of a teak. It's designed to, the finish that we've selected is designed to sort of mimic teak wood. It'll hold up to the weather. It's PVC on the outside and it sandwiches mineral wool inside. And so the idea is to both be aesthetically pleasing, sort of blend in, kind of give it a natural feel, and then also provide some noise retention in that we will have a backup emergency generator only be used in the instance of power outages. Otherwise, it'll only be tested 15 minutes, perhaps once a month. And we've also increased the height of the wall. Typically, we'd only do a 6-foot wall. In this case, we're doing 8 feet. So it's pictured up there if you're interested. So what else can I tell you? We're also placing needle socks on the antennas. It's kind of literally a sock that goes around these 8-foot antennas, and it has needles, and it breaks up that rectangular shape of the antennas to give it a more natural appearance. So we explored different tower types. We talked about the potential for a water tank site. Really not, in my mind, appropriate in this instance. We're trying to build a facility that could potentially accommodate additional carriers. The city has expressed a desire to have multiple carriers on this tower so that we don't have a proliferation of towers all over the place. You know, let's do one and done for this area. Not to say you're not going to need another tower in the other part of town to cover the highway or, you know, by the mall or whatever. You've seen the coverage objective is relatively small. I mean, you're talking about a 1 mile radius, you know, up to 2, but very dramatically degraded service out at that distance. So we didn't really think that a water tank was appropriate. That's why we went with the pine. We can do multiple carriers as they come down. Obviously, the top site is the most desirable. AT&T's footing the bill for this, so they get the top spot. They're the first guy in there, so to speak. I cannot guarantee that other carriers will want to co-locate on this tower. I don't know what Verizon's thinking or T-Mobile, but I do know that other tower is going away, and they're going to need a place to go. And I can pretty well guarantee, I've been doing this close to 20 years, that the other carriers will want to co-locate, and they'll have to approach the city and lease their own ground space. So this is a multi-carrier tower that will be engineered as such. We've laid it back, we've pushed it back off the road as much as we can. We think it's a thoughtfully designed site that's really going to improve fire and life safety and just day-to-day business and the lives of people in the area. Let me see, let me just run through some of these really quickly. So I think I addressed the what other AT&T towers are in the area. I don't know other specific carriers where their towers are, other than there is one other within a half a mile. That's the best I can do on that one. Some questions have been addressed as to other areas that we've explored for this tower. And, you know, we looked at all the available city-owned property, and of all the parcels in the area that would still achieve the coverage objective, this was the best candidate based on the factors that I've discussed earlier. You know, we've heard discussions of lower property values. You know, I would have to ask, but there's many existing towers all over the city in Marina, Monterey. I would ask you, you know, are the property values lower than any of these existing towers? I don't think so. You know, I think that my experience, and I've seen studies on both sides. There's a lot of information on the internet. I've seen studies indicating that people won't move to areas that don't have good cell coverage. So I think the argument could be made that this will enhance the desires of people to move to this area. You know, people are relying on cellular technology these days. They don't, less and less they have traditional landlines, and cell covers provide a backup, a very reliable backup to landline services. Those towers burn up, they go down. Not to say that cell towers don't go down also, but you really need, in this day and age, additional communications. Law enforcement, fire, they all use particularly AT&T communications. Somebody asked a question regarding the term of the lease. I believe we're contemplating a 20-year term of lease. So, you know, it could conceivably run 20 years and then some. You know, who knows what the future will bring. Technologies change, you know, it's hard to say that far out, but I will tell you the lease is a 20-year lease. I think Commissioner Woodson asked about an area of the dunes, and I don't know where the dunes are.
Just south, it's the target area and all the homes. in the
Okay,
area,
yeah, this
but-
site is definitely not designed to cover that objective. And yeah, there are a lot of new homes out there, but there's a lot of new homes going in this site also. You know, I do what AT&T tells me to do, and in their instance, their RF engineers who plotted out the most drop calls and the need for this area. So this is where I work. Not to say there isn't currently, there could be another person just like me working on that coverage objective, but this one is specific to this area. We talked about which tower is being decommissioned. I think we've adequately addressed that. An airport tower. You had mentioned something of issues with an airport tower.
So the tower that is furthest southeast
Okay,
is actually by the airport.
okay.
So that's that.
Okay.
That's so at that point, that tower was built when Fort was still open.
Okay,
Well, I mean, it's an industrial area. So
right.
It's not.
Kind of out in the middle of nowhere, I guess, when it was
It
first.
literally is an industrial area.
Okay.
And it was when Fort Ord was here. So-
And now all these homes have
so
popped
everything
up.
built around. So
right.
It was probably put in.
Talk about credible research, and I'm sorry, I didn't have a good note on that. I can't remember. Did somebody have some information or a question regarding research on?
Yeah, it was answered.
Okay.
In that I was wondering if the research had been updated since 1996.
Oh, and it has,
Yeah,
2019.
2019.
And we can definitely get our radio frequency expert on the line. But while we're on the whole FCC thing, that's one of the most heavily regulated industries is the cellular industry, heavily regulated. Every time we build a site, we do these RF studies, and basically the big picture here is that they need to comply with FCC guidelines. Okay, this site is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dave Kaiser. I think this site contributes once it's built, and we went the extra mile on this site to doing the way we did this study, and Dave can elaborate on this if need be, is we did a baseline model. We went out, we typically would not do this. We would do what would be called a desktop study. Some guy sitting at his desk, he would put in the calculations and spit out, okay, it's gonna comply. In this case, we actually did an on-site testing. Took a meter out there, and it's all contained in his report. And he tested RF signal in the area to establish a baseline. What is out there without the site being built, okay? And then he added in the additional radio frequency levels that would be generated by the new facility. And that's what his report contains. So it's a very thorough study, and Dave can elaborate on that more. It's way beyond what I'm capable of discussing. Let me see, we do cell tower projects on both public and private lands. We do many different city jurisdictions, City of Rockland, City of South Lake Tahoe. I've done them all over the state. Very common. What percentage private versus public? I would say probably 70% public sites versus 30% private. I'm sorry, 70% private owned parcels for most cell towers versus maybe 30%. That's a very just top of mind breakdown, if that helps with that question. And I just want to reiterate, the FCC covers the entire radio spectrum. That's what they do. The entire radio spectrum, of which 5G, C-band, all these different frequencies, it's all covered under that. There's no special study for C-band or 5G, and there's been some excitement regarding 5G, and it's absolutely covered under the radio spectrum. On the aesthetics, I think we could address your concerns with this. Maybe it's too uniform looking. I suspect that's where you're headed with this. So we could break that up with some, trees don't grow in perfect conical fashion. So we can try to break that up with staff. We can work with them. And then, like I said, needle color, needle type. In this case, I think we're going to go with a standard needle type. We've done oak leaves on them. We've done maple leaves type of thing. And I don't think that's appropriate in this instance. I think we're trying to mimic a pine the best we can. It's never going to be a perfect. I can't never seen a cypress, monopine. So just not doable. So what else? I think that just about does it. The backup generator, very important aspect. Staff touched on that. The thing will run during power outages and keep the cell site up. Then it also has a battery bank. The generator charges the batteries. Power goes down, the batteries start up. They run the site, and as those decline, then the generator comes on. So it's really a repetitive system designed to keep the phones working. So that's all I have, folks, and I'm very grateful to be here, and thanks for having us. Thanks for your questions, and I'll be available if you have any other questions.
Thank you.
Okay.
And if Dave Kaiser, is it Kaiser?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
If he would like to elaborate more on the radio frequency that you said you were not the person to be answering those questions, that it might be better answered by.
Dave, I just wanted to touch on the study and the thoroughness of the study, if you would, please.
Yeah, sure. So the nature of our report, we certify that the proposed site will be within the FCC limits. As Guido and Nick stated before, this hearing is not to address what the limits are, but more of that this proposal will be within the limits, i.e. under 100% of what the allowed exposure is to the human body. So a quick reference to that is the limits are related. There is a factor of safety in the limits themselves, and the factor of safety is a factor of 50. So the science that was conducted and reviewed on a regular basis to determine what the safe levels are to the human body, which is related to non-ionizing electromagnetic energy, is that it has the capability of heating the human body up. So as long as the levels of energy are below the accepted level, the human body has the ability to regulate itself and it won't be heated up. And the limits are associated with that factor of safety of 50. So when something is under 100%, it is actually 50 times less than the levels that have been determined to actually heat the human body up. So in our study, as Mark mentioned, we took a baseline of what the current levels were from all of the electromagnetic energy in the area, which can come off of the power lines. I'm sure you all are familiar. There's power lines up and down the roads. So the baseline measurements we took with the tower obviously not there. The highest levels that we read were 6% of the limits. And the predicted levels that we calculated based on all the criteria to determine what the maximum levels would be if every transmitter on the site were operating 100% of the time, which is also very unlikely. Those predicted levels were only 3%. So these levels were in different areas and so forth, but essentially we combined them based on the predicted area and the measured location, and nothing was found to be above 10%. So I'm sure I've gone through way too many numbers, but the predicted levels of existing conditions and what will be there after the tower is erected are still less than 10% of what the limits are, and there's a factor of safety associated of 50 with those levels. So it's well within the limits, and this is also very typical for tower sites and things all around the area. So, but I really don't think there's any stone unturned, as Mark mentioned. Sometimes there could be existing conditions, and all of the energy is cumulative. So as other carriers may co-locate on this tower, there's the buffer of roughly 90% within the limits. And typically the other carriers will add similar amounts of energy. So in our opinion, even if T-Mobile and Verizon both co-locate on the tower, it'll still be well below the limits. And the FCC would not, and the leasing agreement would not allow the other carriers to add to the tower if they were predicted to exceed the limits. So that's part of the application process that Mark and Nick and Guido mentioned. each carrier has to certify that they're not going to create conditions above the existing conditions that go above the limits. So I believe even the future co-locators would not be an issue here, according to what we currently know. Any other specific questions? I'm happy to.
That was the only one that I caught you saying he would be better to answer the question.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate that response.
Oh, thank you. Please let me know if there's any other specifics. I'm happy to elaborate on any of those things.
Okay, I think I'm going to ask if members of the public would like to ask questions at this time. And if some of the questions are ones that you are better able to answer, we'll bring it back to you as well. Okay, so now's the opportunity. If you are a member of the public and would like to speak to this issue, I don't see anybody in the chambers, but we have two who have raised their hand.
Right.
The first one is Jeff Markham.
Yes.
So Jeff, you have been unmuted, I believe, and if you would like to speak to this issue.
Yes,
3
thank you.
minutes, I believe.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to state that I'm not against improving the cellular and data coverage in our city. We have a lot of poor coverage areas, and my issue is more towards if this is the best spot or not. Unfortunately, I'd like to address something that I perceived in this particular meeting is a lack of impartiality in the staff's presentation. And as a taxpaying resident, I would prefer that the staff present the recommendations in an impartial manner and present facts from the applicants as such, referenced and in context. You work for us, and to me, it sounded like an AT&T presentation. The comment like, we have to get the use permit is a perfect example of predetermination. And it would be better it would be better voiced as the city should get a use permit in order to approve this project, should you approve it. So please be careful in your language when you present presentations like this. That aside, I had a question in terms of the LTE 700 coverage map in the packet, in that I'm close to the proposed tower and I'm not an AT&T customer, and yet I have really good coverage inside. So I would prefer to see a composite coverage map from all the carriers to see if this is just an AT&T problem or if this is a community, coverage problem. I'd also agree with the Planning Commission member Woodson that being closer to the Imogene, California intersection seems to make the most sense, in that it accomplishes a better presentation, as the consultant from AT&T has said that the ham radio station tower area is the ideal place. And why that intersection because I walked there's an existing intersection there. There is a roadway just below that the Army built. And so to me, putting a 50 by 50 platform there would not be a big deal. I'm confused. Recommendations from the consultants that have volunteered their times. 3rd Avenue is going to be opened up as a major ingress street into the future Cypress Knolls. So fake tree there. And to me, aesthetics matter and are a core value of our Planning Commission. And hearing things like Cypress Knolls is a baby project and should not be considered is the kind of short-term thinking as to why Marina struggles with so many of our vexing issues. So what I would request is the Planning Commission, seriously consider alternative sites for placement and, understand, is this a community issue or a particular carrier's deficit? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Markham. And if we can, I need to be able to see the other
sorry.
people.
Thank you.
Okay, and so the next speaker is Brian McCarthy. He's a council member for the city of Marina. So Brian, I believe you've been unmuted.
Thank you, Chair Amadeo, Vice Chair Woodson, Commissioners. Good evening. I am Brian McCarthy. Sorry I can't be there in person with you this evening in beautiful Marina. I feel obligated to speak on my own behalf, and my comments reflect only my own desire to share information as an individual that I'm not sure has been detailed enough in the staff report. I know you're going to take all the information you've heard in the public hearing today and make the decision you feel is most appropriate. To be clear, my intent is not to support or oppose this CUP, but to provide some information for the record. The first piece of information is that as I talk to residents in Marina and on the peninsula, And as I monitor social media posts, the biggest cell phone complaint that I hear is the continual dropping of calls along Highway 1. This is something that impacts residents, visitors, and potential visitors to the city of Marina. Second piece of information, which is illustrated in the staff report imagery, but I don't think is really otherwise articulated that well, is that the proposed cell phone tower in this project would not solve that problem. And I think Mr. Lobaugh spoke to this just a little bit. So I think there might be a real opportunity for the commission to consider continuing this item and engaging in slightly more meaningful conversations with the applicant and the citizens of Marina to ask what the desired outcomes or objectives of additional cell infrastructure might be. And maybe that means allowing for an even taller tower, maybe it means for additional towers. But I think it's very possible that the coverage desires of the community haven't been fully considered at this point. Some additional questions you might want to ask the applicant if you feel you haven't received enough information is asking for carrier information about how many calls are dropped in the city and on Highway 1 versus how many calls are dropped in the anticipated coverage area that's presented in the staff report. Mr. Lobaugh did mention that another person might be working on another coverage objective. So it really begs the question if there's some benefit to kind of going back to the drawing board and determining definitively if improving coverage on, for example, the highway or other areas is an objective for AT&T or other carriers, because frankly, we've talked about tonight that other carriers are almost certainly going to co-locate on these towers that are built. And if so, is the chosen location still the ideal location, or is it worth furthering the discussion? And lastly, I'll just say, as I watched the staff report and looked at the findings, I would call your attention to the finding on whether it promotes orderly growth to a city that is free from blight. I'm kind of paraphrasing there, but kind of really think about the impacts of what it means to ensure that the correct location is chosen, and the impacts to orderly growth and blight within the city. So I kind of echo some of the comments just about, the discussion not being anti-cell phone tower, but really just ensuring that the city's been strategic about where that those go. Good luck, and thank you for listening to me tonight.
Thank you, Brian. And those are the only two questions. So and really, they were more of comments. But
Madam Chair, just for a fairness, did we want to ask Jacqueline Gonzalez, Mike Kennedy, Paris, if they do? We're trying to, they're sitting through. We just want to make sure.
I mentioned before this that they needed to raise
Okay,
their hand, and they have not.
Okay, so I just
So I
wanted to
think
give
we
them
need
an
to move on.
opportunity. So
But again, the question came up about sites available. And of course, we've addressed twice now, I think, this site by the ham radio station that has a deed restriction on it, put on it by the Department of the Interior through the Lands to Park program, which doesn't allow for private use, and this would be considered private use. I have heard comments that I saw online that I will add to where this is concerned. They don't understand a private company utilizing the equestrian center versus a private
please speak into the microphone.
A private company that is operating out of the equestrian center, which has the same restrictions, versus a private company doing a cell tower. And I think it's an important distinction, and if staff could answer that question for the public, why the difference there. It's still Lands to Park property. Why is a private company allowed to use the equestrian center? And I could answer the question, but I think it would be better coming from staff. And that this private company can't use the same property for a cell tower.
Unfortunately, I'm not qualified to answer at the moment. We can certainly do research. Our assistant city manager is in the audience. He
let
might
them
have
know
some
that,
thoughts.
too.
I can't answer that this time.
So Matt, do you have an explanation of the difference between the two types of uses for the same type of property?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Guido. Actually, no, I think Guido answered that perfectly. We would probably need to review that with our legal team before we could give you an accurate answer.
It got discussed a lot while I was on the council. That's why I thought you might be able to do it. Okay. Do we have any further questions at this point?
Madam Chair, I did want to address one comment. You know, we always strive to give impartial analysis.
Oh.
I did say the word we, because technically we are the property owner here. If that was misconstrued, that wasn't the intent of staff. We strived our best as city planners to give impartial analysis. And, you know, at the end of the day, we present the facts for any project to the commission and council. We give our best professional opinion, but ultimately it's up to the commission and council to make the final call. But if the term "we" was offensive, it wasn't intentional on my part. It was just technically we do own the land, so that's why I said "we." So
It's
just
we,
wanted
the
to
city, not
just
we,
wanted
the
to clarify that. So
Okay, so if commissioners, I believe, Commissioner Woodson, you said you had further questions that you would like to address? Okay.
And then we'll do comments later.
Yes.
So I think a couple of them were answered. I have one now that's concerning to me. And that was the comment that came out that as you were looking at the pin and looking around for options, that you talked to our developers and the developers basically said no. And so I would like some clarification from the planning department of more of the conversations that have occurred over the last few months, and specifically our developers, because if we were looking at other areas within the dunes and within Sea Haven and within the promenade area, such as rooftop potentially in the buildings around the promenade as commercial facilities, then, or the hotels with rooftops, facilities, antennas there, if our developers are saying no, they don't want to play ball and that they're just going to punt this back to the city, I would like to know that. I think that's my first one. And the second one, and this one will come back to, it's more of a curious one. On the emergency generators on the automatic, I understand the concept of it'll have diesel there and it'll have a battery backup and they'll alternate between the two. What is the planned duration of that backup power before it has to be refueled? And the third one, see, I don't know if that was answered or not. If everyone, I'm just going to postpone that and turn into a comment. Thanks.
Would you like to answer the question now, and then we'll let Audra ask her questions?
So in terms of duration, how long will the batteries work?
Not the batteries is what is the, really, I'm more concerned about the diesel. Is how long will the tank, what is the duration between time power goes out to the time that the diesel tank has to be refilled?
You know, I'm going to throw out, it's a bit of a guess.
That's fine. I mean,
okay,
an estimate works, order of magnitude is fine.
Yeah, it's somewhere between a day to 3 days. And, you know, they come back and they refill them, you know, they refill the tank and it continues to work. So hopefully, you know, your natural disaster power outage doesn't last longer than that. But if it does, you know, you're faced with refueling multiple sites. So it can be an issue. It's the best they've come up with. So I believe it's either a 200 gallon or a 300 gallon tank on this.
That's fine. That's,
Okay,
that's good
okay.
enough. Said order of magnitude was fine.
Okay, fair enough.
And then.
yeah,
staff?
you know, I have not been privy to those conversations. You know, typically if individual property owners speak with wireless people, that's, you know, that's their rights as an American citizen, and we're not privy to that. You are bringing up a larger contextual conversation though, in terms of overall coverage for the city, where sites should go. That actually is a larger conversation that probably needs to be had with the wireless community and some of the, larger master builders that we are working with. But in terms of conversations between the applicant and other private, I'm not party to those conversations. So
I just wanted to add that when I received my instructions to start on this, I was told by AT&T that they approached the developers directly. And I don't know which developers, a very broad statement, or like a year ago, over a year ago, year and a half ago. And when you build out a residential subdivision, there typically wouldn't be unusual for a developer to tell us this. We hear this all the time. We just don't have room in the site plan. It's all spoken for homes, so to speak. So that's what we were told. They didn't have room for a cell tower. Not that unusual, actually. And as far as the shopping center, what is the large shopping center that's?
the dunes. The dunes is
dunes,
where the
okay.
target is. And
Okay.
there's about 1,200 homes
So I
going to
had
be built.
dinner down there today at one of the
So-
places, but a rooftop site down there would not serve this coverage objective, just so you know.
Okay, Commissioner Walton.
Thank you so very much for your answers. And then Commissioner Vice Chair Woodson actually asked my first question, which was, why did the developers say no? And I think I'm hearing you say that the people that invited you to go and do this already came to you saying that they had already spoken with the developers and the developers told you there wasn't any room. And then the other part was with respect to locating the tower by the dunes. It wouldn't serve the community that you're hoping to with the location where it is. Can we bring that map up again? Thank you. Because with respect to that area where most of that green is on that map, it looks like that's the undeveloped area. I don't know if we can zoom in so that I can see that, so we can see it a little more closely, but a lot of that green area looks like where there's no houses. So I'm not quite sure what in building we're servicing if there's no homes there. I know there's homes across the way in the in Sea Haven and Preston and these areas, but a lot of the area that it is covering, the new area is there's nobody there. And so I'm still wondering, I guess, and I think that's more of a comment, but it is leading to my question of, can AT&T come back to us when we have an adequate ordinance available, and how soon would we be able to? I know we have the housing element and you just explained that, but I'm a gamer, right? And I don't have any lack of service where I'm at, and I have great coverage. I don't know why, but I do. And I'm sad for people that don't. And I understand how important it is to be able to access all of your different devices and have them have a nice, but you hit the button and it responds. I totally and completely understand that. Yes. I also understand that South Korea is already working on 6G. So, and they're hoping to have that out by 2028. And we're all very excited about that. South Korea's had 5G for a long time, and they've got a list of their own health concerns that I understand we're not supposed to be talking about tonight. So my question is, okay, so that was one. Can AT&T come back? I'm not gonna hog it, I promise. And then how much will the city make money-wise, revenue with this lease? Is it incredibly important for us to say yes to this now because budget implications, or again, can we come back to bringing inviting AT&T back after we have an adequate ordinance? And I think the rest is a comments from me. Thank you.
So Nick, if you want to pull up the findings of fact. So the focus of the commission tonight is the findings of fact for a use permit. The budgetary implications are not really within the purview of the commission. In terms of, could we make the applicant comply with a future ordinance that hasn't actually been adopted? I mean, I would have to confer with the city attorney, but typically, if you file an application, which they have, and we've deemed it complete, which we have, under the Permit Streamlining Act, the rules and regulations in place as of when we deemed it complete apply. So it wouldn't really be fair to this applicant or any other applicant that comes before you to change the rules midstream. And if you were ever apply for a permit, you would probably appreciate that. You wouldn't want to file a permit in December and then the city adopts some new rule and 6 months later and then says, oh, we're going to make you comply with this stuff. It's a question of equity and fairness. It's just not fair to applicants to retroactively apply an ordinance that, and they've already been in the queue now for a little bit of time. So hopefully that answers your question.
It does, thank you.
Commissioner Walton, did you have any other questions at this time?
I think I just have comments. Thank you.
Okay, great. And now it is Commissioner Jacobson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is for, I guess, you, the applicant, and also AT&T. My question is regarding cell coverage for the city of Marina. Is there any cooperation or co-planning that goes on between AT&T, Verizon, and what's the T-Mobile? Because I don't know, it seems like we could do this 50 times in the next 10 years.
The short answer is absolutely not. That would be a violation of so many different laws. You know, the carriers cannot, what's the word I'm looking for? Monopolize, you know, collusion. Thank you. They cannot collude. Absolutely not. Each of their independent entities working independently to provide service for their customers. Now, that being said, co-location is extremely common in this industry. We do it all the time. AT&T builds a tower, Verizon comes and co-locates on that tower. So in that sense, they do cooperate. They cooperate with each other, but they do not collude with one another at all. There's no sharing of data. Oh, I'll cover this area, you cover that. Absolutely not. Yeah.
I kind of didn't mean you cover this, you cover that. I kind of meant in totality, city and Marina.
They're in competition.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, these are separate entities trying to make money and provide service for their customers, and they're in competition for those customers.
Right.
And so the name of the game is getting out and providing more coverage to more carriers. In theory, you'll get more subscribers to your service, and that's it. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Hurd, did you have an additional question? Okay, we'll get there in just a moment. Commissioner Welton, I see, did you intend to hit your light again? Okay. So now we will move on to comments from commissioners. This is the time for discussion. So I'm hoping I'll see lots of lights. Right now, we just have Commissioner St. John. So if you would like to begin.
Yes, I would. Start. The city has received quite a few emails from the public. The city has received quite a few emails from the public, and my last count was 19 or 20 or so that I've read. And I would just like to make a brief summary of my findings from those emails from the public's comments.
I'm going to ask you a brief question. Are you summarizing their comments for the benefit of those watching at home and for us on the dais? Or
Yes.
is this a summary of your take from their comments?
No,
Okay,
it would be a summary of mm, just to put their comments into perspective.
okay.
Okay. There were about 19 or so emails that I read. And of the 19, 2 were for the cell tower and 17 were against the cell tower. And many of those that were against it were emphatically against it. Those that were for it were one was for better cell service, and one was just in general, they were in favor of any cell service, not necessarily better. Now, the ones that were against, there were 17 out of the 19. And of the 17, 12 of them were the perceived increase in health risk. And of the other 5 of the 17 were predominantly a perceived diminishment of property value or additional health risk problems. So that was the public comments of the emails, what the essence was. And so just to make sure that everyone understands what the public's complaint were.
And if I can, I believe staff has addressed number 1, that perceived health risk is something due to the FCC's governing law, that's not something that we can consider in our analysis. And number 2 was property values. That also is something that we cannot consider in our analysis because that does not relate to what's before us. We have to have specific findings for either approval or denial, and those don't fit within the legal parameters for approval or denial. Am I correct in?
That's
in
correct.
Evaluating? Okay. So did you have more comment?
No.
No. Okay, Commissioner Hurd?
It seems to me that we still need to do more research regarding the location and this agenda item. And the reason that I'm saying this is because I think one of the commissioners asked earlier, how come T-Mobile, a private company, was able to install their cell tower in a private, property, which is like a half a mile away from the proposed tower. So, I mean, that's one thing that we still need to research. And also, I think the staff, Nick mentioned earlier that even though there's this talk about this another wireless facility decommissioned within 5 years, there could be possibility of change. So, I mean,
Sorry, that was a mistake on my part. The deed is deed restricted to be decommissioned per a deed restriction, and you cannot remove a deed restriction put on by the federal government. So I misspoke on that. Apologize.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, then at least in relation to, a private, mobile company able to establish a tower, we still need to do some research. It seems. And as Commissioner St. John has mentioned, the majority of the residents in the area reject to this cell tower for various reasons, whether it's for health or for housing price or for aesthetics for various reasons. And it seems that with this AT&T wireless facility here, AT&T users would benefit the most. And we talked about future collocators, but we still do not know how Verizon or T-Mobile would react. So we are, talking, we are making this argument here based on speculation that, okay, well, once the tower's up there, then other service providers, they would likely use this cell tower. So, but that is still unclear at this point. We are just, again, talking out of speculation. So I think there are, and also, with other services, Verizon, for example, I myself, I use Verizon, and there are times that those connection drops, but it's not that bad. So, I mean, I'm just speaking from personal experience, but, it'll be good to get some idea of, the experiences of other, the users using other providers, how critical for them to have this cell tower in this particular location, so at least, rather than making decisions today, I'm more in the position to propose doing some additional research before we finalize our stance.
Any other comments?
That's it. Thank you, Madam
Okay.
Commissioner.
So Commissioner Jacobson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In discussing this, it seems the question before us is whether this tower can be approved to be 89 feet tall instead of 30 feet tall. I don't think we were asked to say where it should go. It's on leased city land. The negotiations are ongoing. The only question in front of us is whether we can be exempt so it can be 89 feet tall. Now, I know that there's concerns from the citizens, and I think they're relevant. I also think that there's 1,500 homes up there, and we only got 17 emails. And there's nobody out here sitting to discuss it with us, and there was very few comments on the phone. And so I just hate to see us kick this down the road and postpone it. I think there should be an addendum on there that addresses your concern about maybe it should look like a tree. Other than that, I think the question before us is it going to be get an exemption so it's 89 feet tall? And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner. Commissioner Woodson.
Thank you. Now I'll take my questions I've turned into comments. I'm frustrated, and I'll be straight up. I've sat before this commission. This is not against AT&T. This is a bigger comment against what I have seen over the last few years. Yes, I agree. It's about the height. It's a conditional use issue. I am not a proponent of approving it today at the surface level for a lot of reasons. At the same time, again, over and over and over again, we sit in here in a planning commission, and I feel like we're getting played. We get played by businesses, we get played by our developers, and I'll separate those off as two different things. And when I look at this specific area here, what I see is a developer who's going to win. It's a win-win for Sea Haven, and I'll be blunt about that. They are going to benefit from this. In fact, they are going to benefit except for 2 streets of older neighborhoods. They are the ones who are going to benefit the most from this location. They are able to turn down putting a tower in their subdivision, which would have taken up, just like the parking space issue that we dealt with separately, which is not about tonight. We can't give up, we can just park them on the street and they can walk 2 blocks to their house or to their low-income house. This is the same general gist of things. And that is frustrating to me that we are consistently letting our developers, based on policies that were created 15 years ago when these developments were approved, to still drive business decisions and things in our community. The fire station. Now, this is where I don't agree with AT&T on this. And in your deference to costs. AT&T is about business. AT&T is about competition. Competition is about perception. And in this case, yes, we are not going to build the fire station for probably 2 to 3 years on the corner of Imgen. You want to build this tower, I'm assuming, in the next 18 months or less. You can build. It is called backfill. We are not going to build a fire station and put the fire station 40, 30 feet down from the surface. It is going to be backfilled in that area. Guaranteed, when we put the fire station there, we are going to backfill that area to level it out so the fire trucks don't have to drive up a hill to get out to go to a call. We could, with the tower there, and you could put the tower alternatively 15 feet taller. It doesn't have to be 90 feet, it could be 110 feet. If that covers the distance for that gap between the drop right now and what you're going to do. So it still can be 89 feet, can be the terminal height can be the same. You just would have to go down a little bit farther than the tower would have to be. But it's a cost, and it's a cost of doing business. I get that. So telling me that you can't move it 400 feet up the road. And this now comes back to my comment from a planning commission. Yes, it is city property. At the same time, to Cypress Knolls' credit, this is a development that we have literally turned away developers multiple times over the last 12 years because we want to use that development as a shining light of what we want in Marina. This is not a periphery. This is not a small development. We have had opportunities to put just neighborhoods into that. And we have put that off, and we have chosen to say, we want this to be something different. And now we're going to just put a 90-foot tower at one of the 3 primary entryways into this gateway development that we're trying to build. It is what it is. I understand that. But to minimize that's what we're doing is disingenuous, not just to the commission and to the city council. It's disingenuous to the other citizens in Marina. And that leads me to my last comment. What I'm also tired of is I'm tired of everybody pitting, and this isn't necessarily aimed at AT&T, because they're just trying to put a tower in to provide better service. I'm tired of it pitting against the older neighborhoods of our city against the new neighborhoods. And when I look at that coverage map, what I see is, okay, there is an older neighborhood here who is going to benefit from this. And we're going to go back to metrics here. Those emails that were sent to us were predominantly a result of a series of internal communications within Sea Haven community. Most of the people who responded live in Sea Haven, and they are against it. That's great. You go to Nextdoor, and it is the exact opposite. Before the meeting tonight, there were over 20 comments, and most of the comments on Nextdoor are the exact opposite. And where are those residents? They're the residents who live in the neighborhoods that are the older part of Marina, who are going to benefit from this also. So it is, again, the have and have not. I mean, you call it the chicken and the egg, but it's also older neighborhoods versus new neighborhoods. In the long run, it's about the elevation and the height here. And I get that. And that's why I will probably vote for this today. At the same time, we've got to, as a city, stop allowing these games to be played against us. We've got to start looking out down the road, because this isn't fair to all the citizens of Marina who are constantly being pitted against each other. Because right now, this is definitely a residents of Sea Haven versus residents of the older blocks all off of Rain Dollar. Thanks.
Commissioner Walton?
I just wanted to, with respect to firefighters, and this is an area that I don't know a whole lot about, but I did read across the nation, firefighters have been pushing back and winning their cases against having 5G placed on their fire stations. And in the state of California, I just pulled it up. In the state of California, the the governor actually did give them an exemption from having 5G antennas installed at their fire station. And that was my only comment. Thank you.
Okay, I do have a few comments myself. One of the things about having had both experience as a planning commissioner many years ago here in Marina, and then a council member for 8 years, and now commissioner again for almost 4 years, is one of the things that I learned is that the politics, which is when you're listening to the public and voting based on what the public has said. And that doesn't mean that the public should be negated, but we have a responsibility as commissioners to look at what the laws are in the state of California, our city ordinances, zoning, and federal regulations that determine what our findings will be and whether or not we are in compliance with those findings. After that, we have negotiating room. If we see that there are findings that were not included that might negate a project, we can ask staff, well, a finding on how far away something needs to be from a daycare center or a school. That wasn't included in this. Well, maybe it didn't need to be included in this, but that's the kind of finding that you would look for, and that you would ask questions about in order to determine whether or not you can support or deny an applicant. And to say that an applicant, and I'm sorry, Vice Chair Woodson, but to say that we're allowing the applicant to ramrod something through, they spend months and sometimes years. And I remember with the big developments, it was many years to get approval for those developments. And you might work with the city looking for a site, doing the analysis, 6 months for a cell tower, maybe longer. It's not coming in and making a demand. It's saying, help me find the right place for this so I can provide the service that I provide as a company for the people who live in your community. And I expect our staff to do their due diligence to bring forward to the Planning Commission what we need to make an informed decision within the rules, whether that, as I said, it's a local ordinance, it's state law, or it's federal law. And I think that they've done all three of those tonight. I know what it was like here when cell service first began. Nobody had good cell service. And everybody wanted to have that phone in their hand that they could take with them wherever they went and be able to have access to a phone call. Now we want access to the computer we hold in our hand. We can look things up when we need to. And without the good service that is provided by all the different competing organizations, we would still be where we were 20 years ago. And so in my mind, we have an obligation to ensure that as long as we're living within the regulations, that we provide the services to the citizens of this community that they deserve. And I will leave it at that. Does anyone else have any other comments? Then I would entertain a motion. Somebody's going to be gutsy here.
Yeah, I'm doing that right now.
Before the motion is made, there was just a clarification on the conditions. I think it was condition number 20. It's very difficult for me to understand the wording of that condition. And if I can't understand it, I'm pretty sure most of us cannot.
Yeah, this condition is something that
Part D.
Oh, I see. The line got moved somehow.
I am the owner of, and then above to act on my behalf, you named above. that it just doesn't make sense once you scratch that.
Yeah, we weren't intending to scratch that, Commissioner St. John, and I've asked the staff to add this language so that applicants, if a project is approved, they are aware of the conditions of approval, and they attest to the fact that they will have to enforce and implement them. So we've been adding this, and Nick takes the credit for adding that language, so.
Yeah, sorry, when you convert a Word document to a PDF, sometimes lines move. So it was unintentional. So what it says is, I'm the owner of the property involved in this project, and I authorize the person named above to act on my behalf throughout the duration of the project, property owner's name, and then property owner's signature. So
Okay, yeah, I
we can
understand.
make the change to remove the lines and make it make sense when we actually,
Yeah.
we can
From
make
when I-
that change for you.
Yeah, when I read it, scratching out, those made no sense at all.
I believe the first line goes with name. The second line is actually a break for applicant signature, and then there's a break for date. And then it offsets down below to do the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. Okay, so you were going to do, and
Sure.
it's on the screen.
I make a motion to question.
There we go. It's back on the screen.
So I move to adopt resolution 2023 hey, we got rid of the X's now. Approving the conditional use permit number CUP 22-02 to construct a new 89-foot tall monopine wireless facility located in Cypress Knolls property at California and 3rd Avenue, reference grid APN 031-201-005 as proposed, subject to the findings, conditions of approval, and find that the project exempt under Class 3, Section 15303 of the CEQA exemptions for new construction and conversion of small structures.
Would you accept a friendly amendment?
I would.
That would be to include trying to make the monopine look less like a cylinder and more conical. And I know it won't be conical, but having more of a tree shape.
I would agree to that.
Okay, thank you.
More natural appearance.
More natural appearance.
That would be great. Okay, so we have a motion
I'll second that motion.
and a second. Can we have a roll call vote?
Sure. Chair Amadeo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Woodson,
Yes.
Commissioner Herr,
I'm still in the stance where, for us to do some extra research.
So you're
You-
voting no.
You're voting no.
Okay.
Commissioner Rana,
Yes.
Commissioner St. John,
Yes,
Commissioner Walton,
No.
Commissioner Jacobson.
No.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. We will move on to the next. Oh, and thank you so much for joining us tonight and answering our questions. Okay,
Well, a little more of a lighter topic.
he's
For him.
got a quick.
I just have a
Okay.
quick question. Were you the one, so you were actually the project manager who did the towers up in South Lake Tahoe?
I worked on a lot of projects in South Dakota, yes.
I have spent a lot of time up there, so dealt with a lot of the cell tower issues up there.
I did mostly Verizon work in South Dakota.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, lighter note.
On a lighter note, we're very fortunate. We have a summer intern, Zach. He is going to be presenting. Vice Chair Woodson asked for an update about SB 6, or the rest of the commission did, about SB 684. And we wanted to give our summer intern an opportunity. He is going to be going off to college and studying planning. So we wanted to give him an opportunity to present to the commission. So you can beat Nick and I up all day long, maybe be a little nicer to our summer intern. But anyways, we just wanted to give him this experience of being in front of the commission, so.
Fantastic. So it's Zach Bickle.
Mhm.
Very good.
Good evening, Chair Amadeo, members of the Planning Commission and public. My name is Zach Bickle. I'm a summer intern with the Community Development Department, as Guido stated. And I've been asked to provide.
I'm going to ask you to move the mic closer to
Closer?
you.
Yeah.
If I can't hear you in here, they certainly can't hear you
Of course, yeah. I've been asked to provide a brief summary of a few of the proposed housing bills that are going through state legislature right now. These bills, like many others that we've been following and implementing once adopted, are intended to streamline the construction of housing units throughout California. These particular bills focus on the conversion of existing commercial properties into housing and would amend the Subdivision Map Act to change the parcel map regulations to allow up to 10 residential units. So first, Assembly Bill 1490 aims to create a streamlined approval process for the conversion of existing underutilized commercial buildings for affordable housing. The proposed bill has not yet identified any location requirements, but mostly focuses on the affordability and sustainability aspects of the project. Adaptive reuse is defined as the retrofitting and repurposing of an existing building to create residential units. The conditions to be met for a project is that it must be an adaptive reuse project. 100% of these units have to be dedicated to low income rates, and 50% of those units have to be dedicated to very low income rates. There has to be a deed restriction committing to these low rates, 55 years for rentals and 45 for owner occupied units. And it cannot be on a site where more than 1/3 of the surrounding uses are industrial. So some possible implications of AB 1490 is that it will effectively produce more low-income housing faster through a ministerial process. The housing created will promote infill development and more mixed-use zoning. If the housing is in more urban areas and is near public transit, it'll have the possibility of encouraging the use of public transit or reducing vehicle miles traveled, meaning that the project could help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The housing project would also be a greener alternative since it is reducing landfill waste by reusing already existing buildings. It is important to note that since the developments are not required to be developed for owner occupancy, the housing will not address California's home ownership rates, which are some of the lowest in the country. If the developer intends a project for owner occupancy, it would create a great opportunity for families or people of low income to start creating generational wealth. So next up is AB 1532. Assembly Bill 1532 intends to incentivize the conversion of office spaces by creating a streamlined project approval process. This bill would utilize available office space caused by a sharp downturn in the office market since COVID-19 and other economic factors. Office conversion is defined as a conversion of a building used for office purposes or vacant office building into residential dwelling units. The conditions to be met for a project like this is that the office conversion project must commit 10% of housing to low income or moderate income. There has to be a deed restriction committing to these low rates, again, 55 years for rentals and 45 for owner occupied units. And then there has to be a commitment to using skilled and trained workforce for any proposed rehabilitation, construction, or major alteration. So some implications of this bill is that it would produce more housing in urban areas, which would have the potential to encourage public transit and the possibility of reducing VMT. Since the bill applies to projects that involve office conversion, they are a green alternative. Office conversion projects usually require fewer alterations for conversion compared to other buildings. Some important things to consider about this bill is first, again, there's no requirement for owner occupancy. It is unclear if the proposed bill will address home ownership. Second, since there are very little affordability requirements, these projects can potentially lead to gentrification if the office is located near a neighborhood. And lastly, it is unclear how the bill will affect the future availability of office space. It is possible that low office availability could affect job availability and economic growth of an area. I just wanted to highlight the major differences between the two bills that I just discussed. So both bills involve the conversion of commercial spaces into housing. The main difference between the bills are types of commercial spaces being converted and the affordability requirements. So Assembly Bill 1490 involves the conversion of any commercial space, but requires all housing to be affordable. While Assembly Bill 1532 only involves the conversion of office space and has an affordability requirement of only 10% of the units.
Can I ask a quick question about
Sure.
these two? My question is, our commercial space is along our corridor that will become our downtown vitalization specific plan area. And when I look at the current buildings, the idea is we're going to make our downtown more of a downtown. So this is all going to, over time, disappear. What happens if we end up, say, the motel that is near the corner of Del Monte and I believe it's Carmel, ended up being converted? How would that be impacted for our downtown vitalization plan, or vice versa? We now have a specific plan. Could that be converted under either one of these bills?
Yeah, unfortunately, the way the state's moving is, we've brought several items to you guys that say, hey, we're sorry to bring this to you, but the state preempts us. And as Zach has rightly pointed out, these are just preliminary.
Right.
We just wanted to highlight the 2 or 3 ones that are kind of making their way through. But to answer your question, if the state says
Gotta do
you're
it.
being preempted, right?
So our specific plan wouldn't have the teeth in it as it relates to this type of housing.
Right, but as Zach pointed out, if you go back to the first slide, the first one is like, no, the first bill. The first one is like 100% of the units have to be affordable, right? So that's going to be not as frequent. The next one is 10%, right? That's probably the one that's gonna. But even in that aspect, the third bullet here says you must use skilled and trained workforce. So that's basically prevailing wage, contract, union jobs. So that's the balance for a developer is, oh, hey, I want to use all these great provisions, but on
Wait
the
a
back
minute, it's
end,
gonna-
right? So that's why SB 35 has not been as popular as SB 330. SB 330 locks in your permit and you go through this process, you only get 5 hearings. SB 35 has a whole laundry list of stuff, and it has that provision about must have skilled workforce, and there's documentation, right? So anyways, to answer your question, I wouldn't worry too much. We're gonna bring the downtown plan to you guys very quickly. If this stuff gets adopted, we'll have to adapt. So.
Okay. We have another question. Commissioner Woods.
Can we go back to AB 1490? Because there are 2 facilities that actually play. And so this one does not have prevailing wage. So I noticed that
Right.
on this. So 2 questions, a couple questions. First off, understanding this is preliminary, but what is the traction that you're seeing on this one specifically? Or have you heard anything?
So because I'm on a committee for the APA for the one of the legislative. So this one and the other one have been in the works for the last 2 or 3 years, and they end up dying the last 2, but they end up coming back. So the trend is, if you have a strip mall that's just not being utilized because people aren't going to buy stuff as much anymore, if you have an office project that's just kind of sitting there, the state is kind of encouraging this. So to answer your question, this is kind of the direction that the state laws have been going for the last, I've been on that committee for 4 or 5 years now. So yeah.
That leads to the second question. So if we have a developer, even if they have a plan right now that's fully in place and they're building hundreds of homes per se, and a whole new commercial facility and bars and restaurants, and they're calling it the Promenade, and they have 2 other buildings that are commercial buildings that are going to be vacant, one now and one about to be in a month, Bed Bath & Beyond and Party City. Both of those could be great sources for meeting the requirements of something like 1490 that also meet all of the benefits that are we talking about here, which is not only near transit, but also near now going to, well, Target for one right now with that has a grocery capability, eventually another grocery store that's going to be built at the promenade. So when we start looking at workforce, now I'm tying this back to workforce housing, that we still are very deficient of this. And now as we start looking forward and we start looking at the 6th cycle that we're planning for, is this something that we could leverage as we start moving forward into the 6th cycle to look at how do we deal with some of our continuing problems with workforce housing in the peninsula as a whole, but in Marina specifically, when we have these 2 large commercial facilities, we're going to have a very hard time backfilling those with other big box commercial companies because all they're doing is closing down. There isn't this big push in this country in the next 10 years to create more big box stores and expand.
So that's a statement on your part. Are you wanting me to answer that or?
It's a statement and a question.
I mean, obviously we'd have to look at that and, but there are development agreements out there. That's the other additional layer. So I wouldn't be able to answer that. I'd have to kind of look at the DA in terms of how it all plays out there. But to answer your question, yes, this is the direction of conversion of office and retail type uses to off that. That's the direction the state's going.
So I have a question related to this. I know Target actually owns their building, but the other buildings out there at the dunes are leased from Shea Properties, that they're actually the owner. So how does this apply to a developer owning the buildings that might be sitting vacant as opposed to it's vacant, it's being sold off?
Yeah, I honestly, Chair, I'd have to take a deeper dive.
Okay.
Today
I thought
was
you might because you're
today
on the
was
committee.
really just to give the commission an overview, and we can certainly come back and then
It
give.
would be interesting to
Yeah,
find
but
out
we
since
can
they do
certainly
have
do a
2
deeper dive
Right. It's
into
just,
that. So.
first, it's an area that we know is still a challenge. It's something that actually hits on a number of key areas that we have, from transportation to workforce housing to close to a conglomeration of facilities that we're going to have, restaurants and businesses and medical. There's a whole series.
Yeah, there's a lot of policy
positives
implications.
that could come out of something like this. And the fact that Shea owns it, it's one of those, okay, they're one of our prime developers here. Is this an opportunity? Knowing that I fully expected you to have a good answer and say, yes, we could do this tonight.
Yeah, like I said, we'd have to do a little bit more research. So.
But if you could,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We
So
actually have one more bill to go through.
We have one more to go through. So
I do have a light on over here. Audra also has a comment or question.
Thank you. Thank you. Is Mr. Nickel?
Mr. Bickle.
Mr. Bickle, thank you so very much for that presentation. I appreciate you. That was very informative. I have just a quick question. I guess, and also, Mr. Persiani.
Guido's fine.
Guido, I
That's
know,
fine.
but
It's fine.
yes.
I call him Guido because
That's fine. That's fine.
You said that this legislation died before. And my question really is there anything that we can do as a body to help? Is there anywhere for us to be able to reach out to with respect to the community? Mr. Bickle, do you know if there's anyone that the community would be able to reach out to, send letters to, advocate for this 1490 legislation? It seems like it would be something to help our community.
So real quick, my clarifying comment was that I'm on an APA committee that goes over the legislation every year. This legislation is still in play. The
Is
last
it
2 or
passed
3
already?
years, this concept of conversion has been in the last 3 or 4 legislative cycles. And there was one that actually almost made it to the governor's desk last August or July or whatever.
Mhm.
And then it either didn't make it out of one of the houses or he didn't sign it. So that's what I'm saying. But these bills that Zach are presenting are still in play right now.
So they're on the books. They've already
No,
passed.
No, they
are in
are,
legislation. We're trying to
they
get them to
are
pass.
going through the Assembly and State Senate, and by June 30th, that's when they have to have the bills passed through the Assembly and Senate, and it has to go to the governor, and he has until September 30th to sign the bill, or he vetoes it and says, come back next year, and he always has a veto message that says, go back next year, I don't like this for this reason, and then he kicks it back.
Correct. So my question is there any way that this body can help? Is there to advocate? Is there a process that we could advocate for this particular piece of legislation to be passed by the Senate, by the state Senate?
I'd have to get back to you guys on that, because usually that's more the prerogative of the council. They're the ones who usually set the council, what are the lobbying goals for the council, but you as individual citizens can more than contact your state assembly and state senator. But in terms of, usually the council is the one that will say, we're going to send a letter for against or support a bill. So I'd have to get back to the
And
commission.
one of the things, if I can interrupt, is the League of California Cities has, and it is council members that get appointed, but they have various committees that also review the legislation that is going to impact cities. And so you could probably find out from our local district, which I believe is out of Santa Cruz, who the representative is from this area, talk to them about it. And then when they meet, and they meet 4 times a year, that you're very interested in supporting this legislation and find out how to go about doing it.
And we can send the PowerPoint to the commission, and if individual commissioners want to follow up on their own, you're more than welcome to do that. So,
Thank you.
And I'm sorry we interrupted
oh,
you.
keep going.
No worries, no worries.
But the floor is now yours.
Thank you.
Oh,
Okay.
no, I didn't see your.
That's okay, I'll
Didn't see
wait.
your light. Oh, okay. We'll wait.
That's
Go
all right.
ahead.
So SB 684, the process of getting a map approval can delay and add to the cost of a project. SB 684 intends to remove the public hearing process in getting a map approval while encouraging infill development and more affordable housing. So the conditions to be met for this bill are that there has to be 10 or fewer single-family residential units. The parcel cannot be larger than 5 acres. If it is listed in the housing element, it must meet minimum density requirements, and then the development has to conform with, comply with setback and height limits. So some implications of this bill, SB 684 aims to give developers incentive by streamlining the process of getting approval for a subdivision map. It addresses the housing crisis by limiting the average house size to 1,750 square feet. Even though there aren't any restrictions on affordability, the bill claims that by limiting the size of the homes, it will create middle housing types that are more affordable to first-time and lower-income home buyers. Something that isn't explicitly stated in the bill is what the definition of a unit is when it talks about 10 units. It is unclear if the units is referring to homes or parcels. We still need a lot of clarification on this bill. And I just want to mention that all 3 proposed bills establish a streamlined ministerial approval process as long as the projects meet the established requirements. They would expand the projects that qualify for an exemption under CEQA, and CEQA requires the state and local governments to study and mitigate the environmental impacts of a proposed project. Eliminating this review takes away an important step from the project review phase. And then in conclusion, these 3 bills focus on the housing crisis currently facing California. They attempt to encourage the development of homes by incentivizing affordable and market rate residential development and reducing the amount of time for entitlements. These bills would reduce the local government and public input on projects that qualify for an exemptions. It is important to recognize the possible impacts of the bills. There are still many details that need to be worked out as the legislature proceeds. In closing, staff will continue to follow these bills and bring updates to the commission as needed. Thank you. I'm available for any further questions.
And we do have a few, so I'm going to start with Commissioner Jacobson because he had his light on before.
Thank you, thank you. You talked about the state and, and state overrides everything.
Well, the direction of a lot of the bills lately has been that way.
So, I mean, just as an example, let's say that the contractor or the manufacturer that's up at the airport now leaves. And so that big building up there, that big brick building, I think it is.
Right.
empty. Can that just be turned into residential housing?
No, because the airport has a whole bunch of other FAA and Airport Land Use Commission about what can go on there. And so that's a whole other beast that we
That was a
don't.
bad example.
Yeah.
Commercial building can all of a sudden be a residential building.
Well, I mean, obviously Zach showed the conditions,
Yeah, but I
but
mean, we've got it zoned as a commercial area, not anymore. Now that's a residential.
well, once again, this is just preliminary bills. This is not adopted. But so let's put this in the context. So Zach did a great job, first time, good job. So presenting these bills, thank you. But the context of these bills are that the governor declared a housing crisis in 2018, 2019. That's the beginning of SB 330, SB 35, 31. I lost count at 31 housing bills. A lot of them preempt. This is just a continuation of that of we need more housing, we need more housing. So they took away the low hanging fruit. Hey, get your ADU ordinance. You guys did that before I started, right? We got SB 330 is the law of the land, which is you file for the permit. Hey, city, don't change the rules halfway midstream, and you have to approve it in 5 public hearings, right? And now it's, hey, we have all these strip malls that no one's going to anymore because everybody buys their stuff off of Amazon. All right, well, I'm gonna go convert that to housing, right? That's basically, it's just a continuation of all of this stuff. So to answer your question, yes, there's a lot of preemption going on. At some point, we're all just gonna be working for state HCD, I guess, because, it's, and you're asking a lot of really good questions. And these are also larger contextual questions when we bring the general plan to you is what's the future state of Marina retail? What's the future state of the office in light of all of these bills? Where's the crystal ball 20 years from now going to be for the downtown plan and for Central Marina and how the core of these questions is how do you as residents maintain the very unique and diverse character of Marina while trying to comply with these myriad of all these laws coming down, right? These are core to the general plan. So you being on the planning commission right now is really important for the city. So your input in the general plan is really key. So
Yeah, as that presentation was going on, it reminded me of something that I just saw. And I think it was on the internet, it might have been on television, but a city that I don't remember the name of has their transportation set. In other words, their bus station. And they're creating housing on top of it.
right.
And so we've got this mall over here that's pretty much flat on top. So that, those buildings could be used that way as well if Shea would go along with it.
Yeah.
First, we have to know what was approved because that is also the scenic highway corridor. And I believe there were height limitations.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true. That's
so-
true. That's true.
So.
But anyways, to answer your question, yes, we're being preempted a lot. So we'll all be working in Sacramento at one point. So
Okay, so Commissioner Walton. Yes, your light is on. So her light is no longer on. But the last presentation that you did, it kind of surprised me when it says that 10 or fewer single-family residential units on a parcel not larger than 5 acres. So that's like half-acre lots or a third of acre lots, or those would be huge in Marina.
cannot be larger than 5 acres.
Yeah,
So that
and 10 or fewer single-family homes.
Right.
You're talking huge lots. How
Well,
does that
but-
solve our
But
problem?
no, but that's saying that you can't go, I mean, you could do a lot that's 2 acres, right? Or 1 acre, right?
It's- it
So,
Cannot be
larger
larger than 5
than,
acres.
right? So,
Okay, and it has to be 10 or fewer single.
right.
family
So, and
homes.
also the genesis of this bill is the missing middle stuff that Zach talked about.
Oh, here, that
but-
would be estate living in Marina.
But what some cities were doing, and Marina's been very, Marina's been a pretty fair share actor. We're building a lot of homes here.
Oh,
This is not us,
absolutely.
but some cities would say, oh, well, the minimum lot size here is 1 acre. Well, your lot size is 2,000 square feet less. Oh, well, you can only get this much house. And they would make it very hard to build anything on these lots. So this is once again trying to say, hey, if you build 10 lots, however it's configured, then it's a ministerial, doesn't require a public hearing.
I'm going to speak a bit to when I was on the public safety committee for the League of California Cities. But you go in and you review all of the other, where the meeting starts, there's a general, and I call it the general assembly, where all the committees are in one room and they get updates on what each of the committees' bills are looking for. And I find it, how do I describe this? I find it discouraging because not enough people are engaged with what's happening at the state level in advance of the hammer coming down. And I would highly encourage anybody who can be involved. And as much as Guido can give us updates, as much as Zach can give us updates, Nick, who's ever involved at the state level and what's happening, because it does have a direct impact. And I will tell you that at the committee level up there, it's the big cities that get what they want. They see their problems and they consider them statewide problems. And their problems are different than what they have multi-story buildings that are sitting empty office space.
Right.
And they need to be able to do something. They're being sold because of bankruptcy, these large buildings. We don't have those same issues. We have housing issues for low and very low income. But they shouldn't be, it's not a one size fits all. So being able to give that input. I'm a small town. We have strip malls. Oh, by the way, our strip malls are still occupied because we're a small town. We have not grown the way that a large city does. And so to me, it's really important that that message gets out to our legislators as well, because we don't fit the criteria of the bills that are being passed. And I don't know how we address that, because we got voted down constantly at the league conferences on whether to support, not support, or be neutral on bills that were going forward. So how do we as a community counteract that? And I'm just throwing it out there because I think it's important.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you very much, Zach. You really did do an excellent job. And-
Excellent job.
And we look forward
Thank
to you
you.
coming back and presenting to us again.
I just finished up at NPC and I'll be going to UC San Diego.
But we plan to bring him back if he wants to come back. So
Yes.
and
And
he's here for a couple more
already.
months too. So we only have 2 more items, Madam Chair. Just wanted to share, we did get the official approval letter from HCD for our 5th cycle housing element. And that was in large part to the work that you guys did on the affordable housing overlay. And not to get totally technical in the weeds, but the reason why we did that was if we didn't adopt the overlay last year, the state HCD was going to take all those old RENA numbers and tack it onto this cycle. So your efforts have helped protect the city, and getting the housing element for 5th cycle certified means we're not subject to builder's remedy, which you can Google it, is basically anybody could have walked through the permit center and say, I want 2,000 homes right next to you. And there wouldn't have been much we could have done to stop it. So your guys' efforts protected the neighborhoods, protected the city. Right. And then the only other thing is June 10th, MST is hosting a family fun transit fair to have people come out. They are having their surf bus line presentation to the council June 6th. But I think that's if the commission can go out on June 10th just to see what's going on at the MST site, that's another prime opportunity site for potentially housing and a mixed use project. And so you have a voice in that process. And so if you want to go and check that out, we just want to make you guys aware of that. So. No. Getting the housing element 6 cycle to you guys soon. Downtown plan, it's under, I've had it for a little bit of time. I'm getting input from multiple departments. That's going to be coming to the commission. And then the general plan, we've had 2 workshops and Zach actually, some outreach efforts. So we will be bringing the general plan stuff to you soon. So. Yeah, Nick actually is the project planner. He can give us more of an update on that than I do.
I believe the delay is from PG&E. They need to move a box over where the drive-through is going to be relocated to make the queuing work for the number of cars who want to queue. So believe they're waiting on PG&E, but they are still moving forward with their improvements. They have their signs approved, their exteriors approved, the site's approved. I believe they have an encroachment permit. They're currently working on the sidewalk and the entryway. So that's currently under construction. So they're still moving forward. It's just, they were hoping to be open by January. It's now May. So they're a little behind schedule. So. Yeah. That's a union thing. That's a union. They can't hire a subcontractor. Yeah, they can. Yeah. They literally had almost 8 houses finished, not a single one of them out. Yeah, they had to redo the drive-through as well, it looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes sense because the assumption was they were going to reduce that transformer.
So that's the updates.
Oh, I'm sorry. You asked for an update on the major project. So the Dunes phase 3 map will be going to council probably in the next 30, 45 days. Marina Station, Allison and I have been working very closely with the city manager on an affordable housing agreement for that. That'll be going to council probably in the next 30 to 60 days. And then for Sea Haven, we did hear from the commission that you guys want to get more frequent updates from all the big developers. So you guys seem to like the Dunes when Doug, so Nick actually reached out to the Sea Haven folks and they're going to be giving an update to the commission on July 13th. So, and then the BMR, some of the BMR units are actually being constructed as we speak out at the Sea Haven. So those are the 3 big projects. No, the city manager gave a presentation to the council at the last council meeting. What Lane shared with the community is that apparently California, Texas, and another state are in the finals to land a manufacturing facility for Joby. And so he had asked for permission. The council granted him the ability to enter into some type of capital incentive program to further sweeten the pot to potentially get. And I guess we're supposed to find out, say, program. Yeah, there was like close to 1,300 jobs, or yeah. Yeah, we're really fortunate to have Lane as the city manager. He's a great salesman, and he's been able to just project out a very positive image of the city to all these big applicants and Joby, and he's just very pro Marina, and he can talk to you for hours about all the, and he's very good at, even on my interview, he was really good about, so he's the perfect person in terms of hopefully being able to get them to stay here. So yeah, he's great for that. So.
So if there's no other comments from staff.